Mike, you've built so many different teams out there over the years, sales, commercial teams for organizations, anywhere from 6 people on up to a couple dozen in different domains. And we've learned a lot over the years about what it takes to put together a project and execute on a project. We came up with the Strategic Initiative Service, and we'll go into that in a minute. But for the audience, what are the things that probably go unseen behind the curtain, especially in the smaller emerging tech companies?
Yeah, it's a pretty homogeneous problem initially. They want to hire anywhere from 6 to 8 people initially. You have no brand recognition in the market. You've got compressed time frames due to training deadlines, et cetera. You've also got a situation where there's either no HR or there's a fractional HR, or you've got one HR individual, but they're an HR individual. They're not a talent acquisition individual that's going to be able to go in and surgically extract individuals from the market. So that's kind of the framework that these companies are dealing with. And then the challenges are really unique in that if you think about it, let's just start with sourcing. Let's say you want to get a 4-individual slate together for interviewing. In order for us to get you that 4-interview slate, or for the internal individual to get you that 4-interview slate, you have to talk to 25 individuals. And in order to talk to those 25 individuals, you usually have to send out in the ballpark of 200 correspondences out to the market. So if you multiply that times 8, you've now got 1,600 correspondences that have to go out to the market. And then if we layer that down to interviewing, let's say you've got 8 markets, right? You want to interview 4 candidates per market, and you want to have 4 interviews per candidate. You're looking at somewhere in the ballpark of 128 interviews. Not to mention all of the scheduling that goes associated with that. You've got Outlook invites that have to go out. And then after that, you're looking at offer negotiation. You're looking at reference checks. You're looking at counteroffer, dealing with the counteroffers. It's an unmanageable lift for the internal team that just doesn't have the resources to deal with it. And as a result of that, there's generally 3 kind of consequences that we see. One is delayed timelines. 2 is poor quality hiring. Or third, and maybe most importantly, is you get a poor candidate experience. And I'm not talking about the individuals that got hired, because the individuals that get hired have a great experience because they got the job. It's the ones that didn't get the job, that maybe didn't have the great experience, that are going to go out and tell others, and that kind of bastardizes the recruiting brand in the market, which can be the kiss of death. So the SIS is a really unique solution for a problem that, like I said, is pretty homogeneous across all early stage companies.
And it's interesting because when you think about it, you mentioned a few important components early on in. Early on in, you don't have a hiring brand. And the hiring brand is generally what gives you access to the people who are not looking. So that's number one, right? So when TMG calls, being the leading search firm in medtech, I've heard so many times, when you guys call, I'm not looking, but I always return the message, or I always return the LinkedIn message, or the in-mail, or the text, because we have a personal relationship. So that's important to understand. In that pool, everybody has access to the names. Not everybody has access to intimate conversations. So that's an important point that drives you down to maybe the final, if it's 8-person hire, maybe the final 16 you're really looking at. That level is tremendously different. So that's one that I think is important. But on the front tagline of the Strategic Initiative Service is, when the demand for talent outstrips the infrastructure of your organization. And that's exactly what's happening here, whether it's a 4-person hire, 8-person hire, which will be a majority of the clients in that area, or a structured deal like we're doing with Swan and DeSurgical and Revival Healthcare and Olympus, where it's 100+ people in a very tight timeline. So you bring up a lot of logistics there. And one of the things that we have there is an alliance manager between TMG and the SIS program and the client, because the bottlenecks that occur in that area are profound, and the data that you want and the ability to stay in compliance. And more importantly, as you said, the people who don't get the job, setting them up later, so when you go from that 8-person sales force to the expansion out to 16, you can re-tap, if you want to, some of those people on the shoulder.
Yeah, it's been my experience with the SIS that is one of the things that the clients appreciate the most, is having that one point of contact. They don't have resumes. We put a whole team on this, and which they love because they know that it's appropriately resourced. But they don't have resumes coming in from a bunch of different recruiters. It's one point of contact. It goes to their point of contact. It's extremely streamlined, and it allows us to be able to also provide an incredible amount of data on a weekly basis that allows them to know, okay, are we meeting our timelines? And that's huge. That's not only big for the hiring managers, but that's big for the executives.
That's right. And what we typically do, especially in the strategic initiative service, is we look at that timeline, that date on the calendar. That's a must-have. And it's either product launch and or training program to get those butts in the seat trained up to speed appropriately. And then what we can do, because we're such a large firm and so embedded in medtech, is we can reverse engineer that backwards. If you say it's 90 days and it's only 8 positions, we appropriately scale the team for that. But some of these projects are either tighter timelines or larger volume hires or highly specific skill sets required. Maybe it's a neuromod play and you can only take neuromod people as an example, which we've done at scale in the past. We're able to scale up because we're nearly a 40-person search firm with the resources and the engagement with the market. So we're able to look at that, and then that alliance manager also does a really important thing, is those 2 alliance managers, the one with the client partner and the one inside TMG. What we do is we're constantly looking at the process and iterating up. So, it's the classic, we call it a burn-in cycle in engineering. Everything that can go wrong will likely go wrong in a Pareto in the first 20% of that effort. But we get in there and we identify the sticking points, the choke points, and the less desirable points, communicate with that alliance manager. That alliance manager generally has line of sight to the C-suite, and we can quickly increase efficiencies rapidly there. Because to your point, as we say, the hiring process is indicative of your experience working for that company moving forward. And if it's a terrible process, if it's clunky, if it's disjointed, and people are not treated with respect, they're not likely going to sign on the line that's dotted in order to accept the offer.
Well, and just one last point on that is as you mentioned, we can keep those individuals that don't get offered a role or maybe don't accept on that first round. We can keep those individuals in queue, and as the company goes from 8 reps to, let's say, 30 or 40, which is sometimes the next step, that can be also one of the more challenging situations, is growing from 8 to 30 or 40. And if we have those individuals to tap, that makes it much easier. If they have a bad experience in the process the first time, they're not going to come back.
They're going to opt out. Yeah. And then finally, when we talk about the economics of this, and I won't go into direct pricing here, but I will talk directly to value, is if you're looking at a scale up like that, if you've got a fractional HR person in-house, or maybe one single HR person in-house these days, to bring in a recruiting team, a TA team, in order to pull off that effort, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars for competencies. You can certainly hire from somebody for $80,000, but they won't execute. But when you talk about the value of, because the way we design SIS, because of our internal infrastructure and our connection to the market, we price this based on the timeline generally and the volume of hires, not on a fee. So classic search will be 25% first year earnings, or a very high flat fee on some sales roles. What we look at with the client partner is say, okay, what are you looking to get done? We're going to respect that it's a similar profile, just different geographies for the most part on the sales commercial. We'll look at that over a period of time. We've got to make a certain margin during that period of time. You want to control costs during that period of time. We will work with the client and we'll establish a number that works for both of us, because as a headhunter, search firm, you should care less on those projects about what the percentage of the fee is. You should care about how do you solve the client's problem at a number that works for you from a profit margin, and from the client that has a look at it and goes, there's no way we could have done this ourselves. We're outstripped on our internal capabilities. We need to get this done. It sits on the C-suite's must-have list. Let's get it done. And that's a big differential in the market. Nobody does things like that.
Yeah, and one thing that I always think is unique is once you get to these commercial builds, most of the rest of the team is already built. So what are your options? Are you going to go bring in another individual or two to build out this team? And then what happens after that initial team's built? Everybody's kind of sitting around looking at each other. What are we going to do for the next couple months until we get 6 months down the road and we're ready to go to 30 or 40 reps? So that you have those peaks and valleys where the SIS can step in and solve an acute problem, and then boom, we're out. And next time you need us, let us know. We can come back in and execute.
And that's what we refer to as talent access on demand, the strategic initiative service.